Daily Rambam for Monday, Chaf Beis Cheshvan, Tavshin Pei Aleph, the 15th Perek, Perek Chamisha, Hilchos Shabbos. After we began Dinei Hitzah, Perek Yud Beis, the Rambam continued with the laws relating to Akira and Hanacha and Perek Yud Gimel, and in Perek Yud Dal, the Rambam ran through the various Rishuyos. And now we're continuing, expanding on that here in Perek Vav. Bit of a tough subject matter, but we'll try to make our way through it. So we start with Halacha Aleph, Beis, and Gimel are about someone who's standing in one Rishus and doing something in the other Rishus. So the Rambam says, person can stand in the Rishus HaRabim and have his hand inside the Rishus HaYachid, pick something up, and then carry it, back and forth throughout the Rishus HaYachid, as long as you're staying in the Rishus HaRabim, and you can move it around as far as you're able to in the Rishus HaYachid while still standing in the Rishus HaRabim. Yeah, clearly you're limited in how long your arm can go. And
how about you standing most of the time moving, and you keep on moving in the Rishus HaYachid, and now you're moving, saying all over the place Rishus HaRabim.
Well, you can't move it out. You have to.
No, not out.
Yeah.
But you could be moving. You're moving.
You're moving in Rishus HaRabim. Your hands moving in Rishus HaYachid. It's all fine. And vice versa, similar but a bit different.
Your head is
We're going to mention head for certain things. But I'm in Rishus HaYachid and Metalta b'Rishus HaRabim, and vice versa. You're standing in Rishus HaYachid and you're carrying something in Rishus HaRabim. But there, well, actually, chutz la'arba amos. But there, you're limited to within the 4. So that's okay. And if you went out of the 4 amas in the Rishus HaRabim while standing in Rishus HaYachid, you're not fully chayav. You're pater. Ultimately, you're still in the Rishus HaYachid, so I guess you didn't fully carry in the Rishus HaRabim. If you're standing in one Rishus and there's a door and a key in the other Rishus, you can stick your hand out into the other Rishus, pick up the key, unlock the door. Either way. The Maggid Mishnah says that the Machlek is there in the Mishnah. The Meir says you're not allowed to. And the Chacham say you are. And the Ram is passing like Chachamim. And so the Gemara gets the details about where you're standing, where's the lock, stuff like that. He says the Ram doesn't mention it because just based on the rules that Ram gives you here, it's all clear. One more din in this halacha. So if there's an animal standing outside, let's assume it's in the Rishus HaRabim and its head is in the Rishus HaYachid, so then you can stuff its face with food. But when it comes to camel, until most the head and most of the body is inside, it has a long head, a long neck. So if it sticks its neck in and you start feeding it, and then all of a sudden, boom, its neck is outside, your hand is following it. So to be more careful, you need to have the whole, most of the animal inside with you. Like Mishnah says, this is the maskan of the Gemara over there, and Rashi explains that Eifsin is you're stuffing a lot of mispai, a lot of feed, force feeding it into its throat more than it can eat. And that's where the term oifsin comes from. Avos is usually the trough or whatever the box that it eats from, and oifsin is like you're putting that box straight into its stomach. What's the significance? I'm sure. Yeah. If you're not holding onto its neck and you're not able to stuff that amount, so you're holding onto the animal and you're stuffing. Maybe it's important to be holding it that way you're not following it. Now, before we continue, this halacha, the first din on this halacha is actually explained by the Rabbi al Pichsidis and a sicha from Zayin Adar Tavshim Ches, printed in Sefer HaSichas, as we know, that when the Rabbi would forbring, whatever the Rambam was about, the Rabbi would speak about it. So that day, the 3 prakim, one of them was Perek Vav. The Rabbi said, so what's an Adam? Adam is Atim Kriyam Adam al-Elyon, a yid, the way he's created to serve Hashem, Neshama Meguf Re'el Mazeh Agashmi. So, a person standing here in Re'el Mazeh, Rishus HaRabim, the world of separation. That's what we say, which that's what Rishus Harabim is, Al Pi Chassidus. And while standing here in Rishus Harabim, he's able to be metaltel, but Rishus HaYachid Kula. What's Rishus HaYachid? The Rishus of the Yechidei Shel Olam, of the Eibishter, L'mayla. And we know the Torah of the Magid, Da Ma L'mayla Mimoch, the Da, you should know that Kol Ma Shel L'mayla, everything that happens above, in Ilmus HaYoinim, Rishus HaYachid, it's all Mimoch, it's all up to your Avodas Hashem, because Hashem's Ratzon is that whatever happens above should be through the Avodah of a person down here, L'mayis Yadach HaTichseif. So you're standing and you're doing Avodah in Rishus Harabim, doing, for the purposes of the Nimshal, you're working with what's in Rishus Harabim, but what you're doing in the Rishus Harabim is affecting the Rishus HaYachid. Maybe not a perfect Mashal Nimshal, but that's the idea. And Rishus HaYachid Kula, not just limited part of the Rishus HaYachid. The entire Rishus HaYachid, there's no part of the Rishus HaYachid Yechidei Shel Olam that's not included in the Torah of Da Ma L'mayla Mimach, that it's all Mimach. So you're in a Talton, Rishus HaYachid Kula. And then you have the reverse. What's the reverse? That you're in Rishus HaYachid and you're a Talton Rishus Harabim Dal Amas. So it says, Chazal say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not mekapeach schar kol beria. You get your schar. Achas kam v'kama, for right off the bat, Hashem sends you down to this world. You already deserve a schar for embarking on such a journey. Hashem gives you a Hashem begov, Eirachem Hashem Tevis, and Eifen v'lamcha tira b'chayacha. So already at the beginning of your Avodah, you have the schar that you're standing in the Rishus HaYachid Yechidei Shel Olam, and you have the ability to have a pu'ula, an effect on the Rishus Harabim, to turn the Rishus Harabim into a dira b'tachteinim. However, because the Avodah in Elam Haza is not complete, we still haven't actually completed the dira b'tachteinim. We don't have the Suruch Hatum Avim in the Aretz. So your Avodah remains within your Dal Amas. Dal Amas Shalatim Kreinis Loi. So that's the Gvul HaKedusha, and you remain constrained within those Dal Amas. That's how the Rebbe was masber that halacha al pi Chassidus and Tavshim Ches. Moving on to halacha beis, more halachas along these lines. You shouldn't stand in one rishus and drink in the other, unless your head and most of your body is where the drinking is happening. Really, we don't need your whole body. The reason why we said you need your whole body is because we're assuming you're using a nice keli. You need the keli, so we're afraid that you're going to take it with you. So if the kelim are not important, you're not going to need them. Or you're drinking, the bar that you're drinking from is in a caramelist. Even if the kelim are nice. You could just stick your head in and drink where you are, even without putting your whole body in, most of your body in. Halacha Gimel. Before we go on to Halacha Gimel, so the Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Erevin Siman Shinun, a lot of these halachas I looked up, and the Alter Rebbe more or less seems to say the same thing the way that Rambam says it, but over here the Alter Rebbe brings a bit more from Shoinim. The Rebbe says, why don't we look at this as an akir and hanacha? Your head's here and your stomach's here, and you're transporting the water into hanacha in your stomach. So the Alter Rebbe says, no, emekach klum, because it already rested a bit in your mouth before it went to your stomach, and your mouth is a mokim ptur. So it went from there to there through a mokim ptur, and that's already not a problem. And the only time we are geyser not to be machnis from a carmelist to a shosayach through a mokim ptur is only if there's a bishum gzeira that maybe you will do it without a hanacha in the makim tur. You're doing it through the makim tur. You did a hanacha in the makim tur, and you continue to the shosayach. What if you're going to skip that step? But here you can't have that gzeira because the water always stops in your mouth. We're doing a specific act here where there's no other way to do it, so there's no concern. Often Tim Tzaleima, the Alter Rebbe says that your mouth is not a makim tur, but it's like the rishos that your whole head is in. So if your head's in the carmelis and your mouth is a carmelis, so Yeshesh Levim came. So weiter. So the Akira and the Anocha happened in that rishos, and But then is it might be shus to shus when it travels again? So fine, there's an akira and an hanacha in your mouth, and an akira from your mouth, and an hanacha in your stomach. So is that again a problem? Akira from the other shus and hanacha in this shus. So yesh leimar that swallowing it is already the hanacha. Once it enters your throat, it's just gone. There's no we don't speak about it. That's still its own independent entity that's moving and having a hanacha. It's gone. Yeah, so it lands in your mouth and it just is nifla begufa. It's batul gabi gufa. That's how Alter Rebbe explains it there in Siman Shin. Now we're going to halacha gimel. Oim adam mishus adam mekaylet min ha'avir min ha'mayim ha'mekalchim min ha'tziner min ha'kaisel b'shoisa u'vulvad shleyiga b'tziner b'kaisel b'yiklet be'algam. You can stand on mishus adam and there's water dripping from the air from a pipe or from a wall. So you're allowed to catch that with your mouth, as long as you're not actually touching the pipe or the wall and sort of directing it towards you. And if you did touch, then it still depends. If it's higher than 10 from the ground and it's close to within 3 of the roof, that's mamish, like you use your hands to take something from the shusayachid and bring it to you in the shusarabim. Or if the pipe was 4x4, now it doesn't matter whether it's within 10 or not within 10. It's like its own rishus. It's like also rishus hayachid. But you're still not chayav because the water never actually landed. And they were flowing. In which case? It's 4x4. Then it's not a Makam Torah. Makam Torah is less than 4x4. But this is its own tziner. Is now its own thing. Now we move on to the halachas of a ziz, a bit of a thing sticking out under a window, a ledge. Halachas Daled Hey Vav and Zayin. So Rambam says ziz shalafnei achaloin yetzi ba'avish shal shus harabim. You have this ledge in front of the window sticking out, the air over the shus harabim. It's above 10 tefachim mutar l'shtamish alav. You're allowed, if you're in the house, you're allowed to stick things on the ledge from inside the house. She'ein l'shus harabim tefesas ela ad 10 tefachim, because the shus harabim ends after 10 tefachim. So this is now just an extension of the house or whatever. Therefore, you can use the whole wall. Really, you can stick your hand and stick stuff on the wall or whatever, as long as you're avoiding the bottom 10 tefachim. Hey, that's if there's only one ziz, one ledge. But if there's 2, one below the next, even if they're both higher than 10 tefachim, if the top ziz by the window is 4x4, also the shtamish alav. It's like its own rishus hayachid. And the ziz on the bottom is also rishus hayachid, but its own rishus hayachid. And the one on top is one in its own right, and the one at the bottom is the extension of the house. So it's like 2 different rishus hayachid. You need an Erev or something. So it's like from one rishus hayachid to another rishus hayachid. That's the problem.
That's terrible.
But that's the problem, that you can't just carry without an air. Vav, ein be'ayin arba, ein betachton arba. What if neither the top, or we still have 2, but neither has 4? Then mishnamish mishneim, then back to no problem. Same for the wall. Again down to the last 10. What if the bottom has 4 and not the top? So if the ledge extends past the window's here, and the ledge extends in either direction past it, so you can only use the part of the ledge that's exactly outside your window. The rest of this is on the 2 sides of the window. Again, the same issue in reverse, that the bottom one, which is 4x4, is its own rishos. And then you have the parts of the ziz that are outside the window are also like their own rishos, but the part of the ziz that's connected to chaloin is an extension of rishos hayachid. That's I'm sure a lot of these things, lav dafka, are so pashut based on the Gemara, and you could be Raivitz and Magamishnas, but we're going to keep it simple. Zayin, kol ziz hayetze al aver rishos harabim shemuter l'shtamish alav. So we said there's a case, you have a ziz sticking out, you're allowed to use it. There's one more caveat. When you're putting things or taking things, it can only be fragile. It has to be earthenware, glass. Because what if there's an accident and it falls down? Smashed. Okay, you give up. Finished. But anything else, any other utensils or food, it's so precarious, it might fall, and I want that back. So you can't put that there. Now we move on to the case of two houses. You have two houses on two sides of the Shus Haram. You can throw from one to the other higher than 10. As long as they're both yours, or you made an Erev. Even allowed to throw other things that if they fell, you'd want them. That's if they're across from each other. But if one is on top of the other, I'm not sure exactly, but the point being that one's on top of the other. Also, you're not allowed to throw anything that's valuable that you're going to want. What if you miss? Your shot misses and it falls down. You want it. If you want to throw something fragile where there's a risk that it'll shatter, then all be it. You can throw. Maga Mishnah says that this is machlekes shnei gagim b'shnei tzider shus adam. The first case is machlekes. Rav said aser, Shmuel said it's mutter. But then it says that one is on top, one is on bottom. The good is that apparently Pascal like a Rav B'Isure in the case that we said was aser.
If you make an error, you have no problem.
Yeah. Dafka when the roofs are not, but when the roofs are not on the same level, when they're on different levels. So maybe that's what the didn't mean one is on top of the other, like 2 stories. I meant they're across, but they weren't exactly the same level. If the 2 roofs are exactly level, so then you can throw. But if one's higher than the other, then Rav said aser, and we hold like Rav B'Isure. Halacha tes. Ber b'reshus harabim. So now the case of a pit. Ber b'reshus harabim. So there's a well. V'chaloyin al gabav. And there's a window above it, which you might want to draw water through. A ber b'chol yosei mitzdarfen la'asara. So we say the depth of the ber itself plus the cholia, which are the bricks or the earth that come up around it. So if there's 10 tefachim from the top of the earth to the bottom of the pit, then it's its own shus, so then you can fill water through the window, through the hole.
Why?
This is not part of the Shus Harabim, it's its own shus.
You're in a different room.
No, it's a Shus Yachid, so therefore you're allowed to draw from it.
Yeah, but you in a chalon, you bring it into chalon.
You're taking it from a Shus Yachid.
You're taking a Shus Yachid. What's the
through
without a hanacha anywhere through nothing, through makom tur. But medvar mamurim b'shahaya samach l'kaisa b'terech arba tefachim shein adam yachal laver sham. This is only if it's within 4 tefachim of the wall, so you can't really walk through it. So the Shus Harabim really is totally not going on over there. Avim muflig, but if it's further away, so then then it's not enough that you have 10 tefachim from, including both the bar and the cholia. The cholia itself has to be 10 tefachim high. Why? It's much technical. Now, the previous case, you didn't need to be a makom tur because it's its own rishus. But here, you want to make sure that it's not going through the Shus Harabim on the way back to your window. So if you have the choyas is 10 tefachim high, so automatically, as soon as the bucket clears the choya, it's automatically the makom tur because it has to clear a 10 tefach high choya. So that's that halacha. Halacha yod ashpa b'Shus Harabim g'vay asari, a garbage dump, 10 tefachim high in Shus Harabim. Chalein al gava.
On top of the heap is makom patur.
Yeah, and there's a window on top. Shayv chalamayim Shabbos, so you can pour water because it's 10 tefachim high. But medvar mamurim ba'ashpa shel rabim shein dark l'ispanis. If it's a public dump, and apparently public dumps don't get cleared away. They didn't have public sanitation. Shel yachid, Dafka, personal one, then you shouldn't pour Shemat Espana because you're pouring and pouring. Meanwhile, someone cleared it away down there and you're unaware. But Nimtzu Sheifchen Kedarkim Shesadam, and you're still pouring and garnish. There's no 10 Tfachim anymore. And so this is a Gemara. The Gemara says, why aren't you chayshish about the ashba being taken away? And they said, like Hashia, had Rabam, had Yachid. And the Rashba adds in a Kudah, he says, why aren't you afraid that if you're pouring something into the ashba, maybe it's going to be misgalgal, it's not going to land where you want it, and you're going to want to go back outside and put it back in the ashba, like the Shnei Gagan. So he said, you throw something in the ashba, it's something you don't want. So you don't get, it's mayim, shivri kalim, you're not going back out to put it, to retrieve it and put it in the right spot. Now, Alter Rebbe also brings that detail in Shulchan Aruch V'Mekayim. Now we move on to the Amas Hamayim. That the Amas Hamayim is a channel of water. It's coming from a larger body of water somewhere nearby, and it's interrupting the mechitzas of the Rishus HaYachid and going through the Chatzar. So the Rambam says, Amas Hamayim she'yiveres b'Chatzar. So im yesh begava asar tfachim. Uvarachba arba a yasral kain ad eser amas. So if it's 10 tfachim high or deep, and it's 4 tfachim wide or more, up to 10 amas, but less. Ein nemal imena b'Shabbos. You cannot, if you're in the chutzah, you can't just take water out of it on Shabbos. Elam ken osla mechitza gevaya asar tfachim b'knisa b'yitzi. If the first put mechitzas to separate it from that larger body of water out there, that's a karmelis. Once you put those mechitzas up, now it's part of your chutzah. Or at least it's not part of that. And if it's not even 10 tfachim high or 4 tfachim wide, then it's bottled to the chatz, part of the chatz. Yud Beis, that we said until now was up to 10 amas wide. What if it's wider than 10 amas? Then even if it's not 10 high, then you certainly can't fill unless you make a mechitzah. Shekol yaser al eser pirtzehim of says mechitzas, because simply the Amas Hamayim is so wide that your Rishus HaRabam's mechitzas are not mechitzas anymore. You can't have such a big gap in your mechitzas for Rishus HaYachid, and you have a problem with carrying in the whole chatzar. So mal atalto b'chol chatzar. How can you carry? So nishar pitzara pirtza pas mikan upas mikan b'chol shehu. If you have a piece on either side that's even very small, I pass a rachav abba tfachim b'ruach achas, or one that's 4 tfachim wide, then mutal l'tauta b'chol achatzer. That's probably the kind of a lechi. The ein osir el lamales min ha'amal b'va, but you still would have a problem to fill it from the amma itself. That still doesn't have its own mechitzas, so you can't fill from that. Avamleinish or pas klal, if you don't have a path, and also the tauta b'chol achatzer, shenifritz achatzer layam shu karmelis. Your whole chatzer is missing its mechitzah, and there's a yam right there where the Amas Hamayim presumably is coming from. We started making a mechitza. Are you making a mechitza in the water? How do you do that? So if you constructed it that it's essentially outside of the water, on top of the water, so then you need just a tafach to jut down into the water. What if it's the opposite? What if you put the mechitza down in the water? You need a tafach to stick out. Because you need both. You need to have both the air and the water. Because in that way, the water in the chatzar is distinguished from outside. And even though the mechitza doesn't reach the ground, as long as it has 10 tfachim, they only allowed this kind of thing for water. The whole isser of mayim is b'derabanan. So Caleb Chitzasa, they're making them Mechizerena Ela Kadelas is Hacker. It's just so you could tell it apart. That's it. Halacha Yudalid. Amas Hamayim Ha'iveres Bein HaChatzeres. What if you have this kind of thing that's weaving its way through various Chatzeres? Ve'achaleines Psuches Eleha. And the windows are open. So Ein Bakashir, if it's not that big, Mishal Shem Bliman HaChaleines. So you can actually just send down a bucket and fill up. If it's within 3 tfachim of the wall. But if it's more than 3 tfachim away from the wall, you pass him, So the wall is here, and the Amas Hamayim is parallel to the wall. So you need the pasim sticking out of the wall, going maybe a little bit into the water. And then the Amma is like it's going through the Chatzar. So those are the halachas that relate to that. Now we move on to the Gezustra or the Ketzutzra or whatever the spelling is. But just the alternate spellings. It's you see these spellings in the Rambam. It's a Greek word anyway. Ketzutzra shilamayla minayam. So ketzutzra is basically a balcony that's above the water. There's actually an opening in the floor of the Gezustra, so you can lower things down to the water. You can't fill through that hole from that Gezustra on Shabbos. There has to be a mechitza of 10 tfachim in the water facing that opening. Or it could be from on top, attached to the gezustra, going down towards the water. So basically, we're using the principles here of either a good achis or a good asik, as the Maggid Mishnah says. That if it's going down, you're lamata can make haveres, like a bit like a beehive. Then you say good achis, and if it's lamayim and amayim, then we say good asik. So it's all within the mechitza.
But you have only one. It's only one wall going down. What kind of mechitza is it?
I mean, it's a circle. It's like a tube. He's like a kaveres. He said like a box. Whatever. Yeah. Just like you can fill up through that, you can also pour down through that. You're pouring on a caramelist, and apparently that's fine. So now we move on to pouring water in a particular type of chatzar. If the chatzar is smaller than 4 amas by 4 amas, in sheifchim b'teich hamayim b'Shabbos, you can't pour water into it, even though it's a rishus hayachid. Mipnei she'en yoritzin rishus harabim mehera, it's going to go straight out into rishus harabim. It doesn't look good. Guma machazekas sasayim b'teich hachatzar. You have to make just a bit of a hole. But not too big, as we're going to see. That can contain 2 sa'ah in the chatzar, or b'shus harabim b'tzad the chatzar, or b'shus harabim right next to the chatzar. So that way, when it flows out, you said it's going to flow straight to the shus harabim. So at least there's that guma right there that's going to catch some of it. That way, the water will end up in there and not just flow into the shus harabim. But tzarech livres aleh keep me b'chutz, and you have to build some kind of covering on top of it. Uka is another word for guma. So that this uka can't be seen made shus harabim. It doesn't look right. But start from the arba amas. If there's an achsadra there, it's part of the doorway or whatever, then that you could count that as part of the arba amas, and you wouldn't have this problem. But assuming you do have this problem, what would that hole look like? What would be the dimensions? Chatzi ama, half an hour by half an hour by 3/5 of an hour, not especially big. Yud Zayin. What if you didn't make it the size of 2 sa'ah? You made it less than 2 sa'ah? Then you can only pour the amount of water that can fill up this hole, and that's it. Once you make it the size of 2 sa'ah, then you can pour out even 60 sa'ah of mayim. Even though the water is immediately going to spill over. When do we say this? We may say shamim. Dafka in the winter and the rainy season. When everything's getting ruined, there's no proper sewage and pipes, so everything was very wet and messy and muddy. And there's water coming from pipes everywhere. So no one will presume that, he's using his chatzar and that's why the water is going out. But in the summer, and even if it holds sasayim, you can only pour sasayim in. And if it's less, in then you can't pour anything. So more machmir in the summer.
This problem of ein sheif halot is inside maris ayim, or it's
seems like a form of that, yeah.
not an isur of
Yeah, it's just what it looks like. Yeah. We're calling it mikoichai, but Yervayu haroyim loymar, that's mikoichai. So Yud Ches. Now, what about Yud Ches and Yud Tes? What about a biv? Similar halacha. Biv sheshayvchan leimayim. There's instead of pouring into the chutzner, there's actually a canal. It's meant like a sewer, meant to pour the water in. They go actually under the ground. And then they end up in the Shusarabim somewhere. Or the pipe where you pour water into the tzinar, and then ultimately it flows along the wall, drain. Yeah.
So the only reason our sewage would be mutter is because of the fact that it's deep into the ground already. It would be in a. It has no shackles.
It's a good point.
Yeah, but it's deep into the ground already.
Are you allowed to flush inside your house when the water is going out?
It's not going into the Shusarabim anyway. Where is it going?
No, it is. The sewage goes straight into the under the ground. I'm saying that's the only reason it would be
Is that
mutter.
considered Shusarabim?
Under the ground. Okay.
Yeah,
Common.
Probably under the ground, not a Shusarabim. Yeah. But this case, we're talking about where it does ultimately end up in the Rishus Harabim. So even if it travels 100 amas along the wall or under the earth, also you can't pour into the opening. In this case, it sounds like it's taka. What you're doing is mikoichai. You have to pour outside the bib, and then it goes into the bib, and then it goes into Rishus Harabim. But you can't pour directly into a channel that leads to a drain that leads straight to the Rishus Harabim. Again, we have a winter-summer divide here. In the summer, but in the rainy season, you can pour and you can pour again, and you don't have to hold back. Again, there's water all over the place. And from your perspective, you don't mind if the water stayed here. It's not like you need the water to go there. And if you're pouring on the biv and it ends up in a karmelis, even directly, if you're pouring directly into the drain, then it's mutter. Even in the summer, this koiche problem doesn't apply to a karmelis. Another example of this is the you're on a ship, you can pour something along the walls of the ship, which is a karmelis, that's the shusayachid, but when you're in the yam, then it goes into the yam, which is a karmelis.
How?
You're just standing on the ship, and you spill on the side of the ship.
And Hafkamina, it's still sliding into.
Yeah, but it's into karmelis, bikoichai, and that's not a problem. You said
but on the karmelis, okay.
Yeah, the oceans are karmelis.
The oceans are karmelis.
Speaking of ships, chaf lo yamale min asfina. If you're on a ship, you shouldn't be pulling up water from the ocean. Unless you made like a special 4x4 and you're drawing through that. I think it's not like mamish, doesn't really have an effect like Gabi Rishuyas, but that's what you're supposed to do. That's if it's a very low ship, so this is all happening within 10 tfachim of the ocean. But if it's higher than 10, then Maitzi Ziz Kolshu Mamale, you just need a little Ziz. It's through a Makim Patur. So here it's Misham Hacker. Maybe before Taka was, you needed a Rishus Hayachid over there. And here it's just a hacker because it's going through a Makim Patur. Now we move on to the halacha. This is a Mishnah in Shabbos about the Sefer, Shines Galgal, that rolls out. You're reading Sefer, of course, it's a scroll, and you're in a karmelis. And some of it suddenly rolled out of your hand into the Rishus Harabim, and some is still in your hand. And the Skalgal chutz la'arba ames, so if it's already beyond 4 ames where you are, you turn it over face down, even though usually you're not allowed to put Kisva Kodesh face down, but here it's preferable to the alternative. You're afraid you might, if you keep holding it, you might drop it and then you end up moving it for ames. But if when it rolled out originally, it was still within 4 ames, then you can roll it back to you. And if it rolled in Shusayachid, you can roll it back to you. If you're reading in the Shusayach and it rolled down to Shusayach, so if it actually came to a rest, then you just have to turn it over right away. But if it didn't actually land on the ground, let's say it was from a window or something, so it hang on to Shusar Album and it didn't actually touch the ground, then so you can roll it back to you. Final halacha chav beis. Hamaver kreitz kolish liyusku boy rabim. So this in the previous Perek Dalet it said the Isser Karmelis is midrabanim goes to someone to Shusar Album. We're afraid you'll confuse it with the Shusar Album. So it's in Perek Dalet. If you don't need the guf ha'hitzah, it's not malacha yitzirich l'guf. For example, the kites that you're just carrying the kites in the Karmelis, the others shouldn't be hurt. So it's Shusar Album. It's aser. When a Karmelis it's mutter. That's in that case the malacha yitzirich l'guf. There's not a problem. Even if it's kama amis. That's what it's in Perek Dalet. So now, following up on that, that's you're doing that. So if it's not in the karma, then your only option is to do less than 4 amas at a time. But if in that case, even 100 amas normally. Another exception we make is dead body and it's decomposing. When it's bazios and you die, it's not very dignified. The neighbors can't stand it. The Carmelist, you can take it out from Meshus Hayachid into a Carmelist so it can wait there, rest there. If you, another halacha, if you go to wash yourself in the ocean, so it certainly fits with the Rambam's shita about schita with hair. We mentioned schita with hair the other day. I was looking into it a little bit today. So the Rambam is the one who says that it's not a problem. The other Yishayim are a lot more nervous about schita, and you have Rishonim that said maybe you shouldn't even go to the mikveh on Shabbos. And others say, well, you can't say that, and that's a whole discussion. But going to be rechet bayam might seem to match with not being cheshish for schita. So when you come out, menagav atzma, you dry yourself. Shema yavr mayim she'alav arba amas b'karmelis. You don't dry yourself, you might be carrying the water on you for amas b'karmelis. You can't. Right? Yeah. So that's the concern. He says here, you have to make sure you're dry and.
Sure.